An ingredient used more in Central African for traditional brewing is corn, known as pito, which is a local beer originated from the northern part of Ghana and some parts of Nigeria. It's made out of fermented Guinea corn, taken to the meal, added with water, cooked for about 5 hours before it can be consumed as a beverage. Sometimes can contain alcohol and also made to be non-alcoholic. Yeast is used to produce the alcohol in the drink. Today's recipe we have corn beer. This is corn beer. It is brewed traditionally in many parts of Africa. African corn beer, also known as maize beer or sorghum beer, has a long history in many African cultures. It is a traditional alcoholic beverage that has been brewed for centuries and continues to be a popular drink in various regions of Africa. Maize, corn, and sorghum, the main ingredients in African corn beer, are native to Africa and have been cultivated on the continent for thousands of years. The brewing of corn beer dates back to ancient times, and it has played a significant role in social and cultural practices in African societies. The exact origins of corn beer are challenging to trace, as the brewing traditions have been passed down through generations orally rather than through written records. The creation process of African corn beer involves several steps, which may vary slightly depending on the specific region and cultural practices. The first step is malting, which involves sprouting the maize or sorghum grains to activate enzymes that convert starches into fermentable sugars. The grains are soaked in water, allowed to germinate, and then dried and ground into malt. The malted grains are mixed with hot water in a large vessel or it lined with banana leaves or other suitable materials. The mixture is stirred thoroughly to break up clumps and promote the release of sugars. The mash is left to rest for a period of time to allow the enzymes to convert starches into sugars. Fermentation. After mashing, the liquid portion of the mixture, known as wort, is separated from the solid grains. The wort is transferred to fermentation vessels, which can be ceramic pots, wooden barrels, or other containers. Sometimes, additional ingredients like yeast or traditional starters from previous batches are added to initiate fermentation. The vessels are covered or sealed to prevent contamination and left to ferment for several days to a few weeks. Once fermentation is complete, the beer is strained to remove any remaining solids. It is then ready for consumption. The beer can be served fresh or stored for a certain period to allow flavors to develop further. It's important to note that the exact brewing process can vary across different African cultures and regions. Some communities may include additional steps, such as boiling the mixture before fermentation or adding herbs and spices for flavor enhancement. African corn beer holds significant cultural and social importance. It is often consumed during celebrations, ceremonies, and social gatherings, and it plays a role in strengthening community bonds. In some cultures, the brewing process itself is considered a communal activity, with individuals coming together to participate and share knowledge. It's known as the Pearl of the West, Mexico's second largest city, Guadalajara. Inside this modern metropolis of almost 5 million people leads a 16th century heart, the land of tequila and tricks of intense sweetness of blue agave fields that embrace this city. Mexico's town Tequila is the birthplace of Mexico's national drink. It's a town filled with color, blue agave plants. Red soil is found in the Galvez region. This soil gives a lot of minerals to the profile of the tequila. The plants from this region are really fruity as well. In Milazzo, also Paris, this succulent has provided this community's livelihood for centuries. Mexican agave sugar is sustainably sourced and organically certified. The Aztecs would use agave nectar with salt as a dressing for wounds. These days it's revolutionizing Mexican cuisine. It's considered around 1.5 times sweeter than honey or sugar. "260 million liters of tequila is produced annually." The production of tequila is very similar to mezcal, an alcohol-based beverage from agave plant, but with a few very distinct differences. Most mezcal production is centered around the state of Oaxaca, while tequila is produced in the state of Jalisco, home to its birth city Tequila, the source of its name. Tequila is a distilled beverage made from the blue agave plant, primarily in the areas surrounding the city of Tequila. The red volcanic soils are well suited for growing the blue agave, and more than 300 million of the plants are harvested there each year in agave fields. At the city of Tequila in Mexico are about 136 different types of agave, only 5 states in the country and allowed to produce tequila. It takes at least 7 years to obtain the mature agaves, so production has to keep going year-round. Per year, millions of agaves, about 600 hectares, is needed. In total, Casa Laguna has at least 14 million plants for a day total. Himalayas are about in this field 17. They are going to harvest 60 tons, so Extremadura is going to make around 120 plants in less than 6 hours and is about 3.5 tons. Agave is used from the highlands of Jalisco. The distillation technology to produce mezcal from agave heart juice was first introduced from the coastal regions of Amatitan, Tequila, Magdalena, and El Areno in the mid-1700s. The mezcal produced in these regions became distinctive enough as to become known as tequila, named after the town. Prior to the production of either tequila or mezcal, pulque had been brewed from agave for thousands of years. Unlike other tequila production steps, fermentation is one of the few steps out of the control of human beings. Fermentation is the conversion of sugars and carbohydrates to alcohol through yeast in anaerobic conditions, meaning that oxygen is not present during the process. Fermentation is also carried out in a non-aseptic environment, which increases the bacterial activity of tequila. The participation of microorganisms from the environment, yeast, and bacteria makes fermentation a spontaneous process, which gives rise to many byproducts that contribute to the flavor and aroma of tequila. During the fermentation process, inoculum is added to the batch to speed the rate of fermentation. When inoculum is added, fermentation can take approximately 20 hours to 3 days. If inoculum is not added, fermentation could take up to 7 days. The rate of fermentation is a key factor in the quality and flavor of tequila produced. Worts fermented slowly are best because the amount of organoleptic compounds produced is greater. The alcohol content at the end of fermentation lies between 4 to 9%. The alcohol content in tequila is affected by three factors: the amount of isoamyl alcohol and isobutanol in the yeast strain, the carbon-nitrogen ratio. The higher the ratio, the more alcohol produced, and the temperature of fermentation. The higher the temperature, the greater concentration of isobutyl and isoamyl alcohols produced. Although if temperatures are too high, this can cause the yeast to become less effective. The role of yeast is, through many enzymatic processes, to turn sugars and carbohydrates into alcohol. There are two steps. First, in aerobic conditions, yeast is doubled in colony size every 4 hours. This process goes on for 24 to 48 hours. Tequila is a distilled beverage that is made from the fermentation of the sugars found from the blue agave plant once it has been cooked, the main sugar being fructose. 34 Through the fermentation process, many factors influence the higher alcohol content of tequila, which are molecules such as isobutyl alcohol and isoamyl alcohol and ethanol. Whiskey is a distilled alcoholic beverage that has a long and rich history. It originated in different parts of the world, including Ireland, Scotland, and the United States. The origins of whiskey can be traced back to ancient times, by alchemists who were searching for the elixir of life. The knowledge of distillation spread across the world over the centuries. Ireland has a significant role in the history of whiskey. Irish monks are believed to have brought the technique of distillation back to Ireland from their travels to the Mediterranean in the 6th century. The Irish began distilling a spirit called Uais Beatha, which means water of life in Gaelic. This term eventually evolved into the word whiskey. The art of whiskey making also emerged in Scotland. The Scottish began distilling whiskey spelled without the A in the late 15th century. The unique peat-rich Scottish landscape and the use of malted barley gave Scottish whiskey its distinctive smoky flavor. It can be classified into different types, including Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, bourbon, rye whiskey, and more. The variations in ingredients, distillation processes, and maturation techniques contribute to the diverse flavors and characteristics of these different types. Typically, it is brewed from fermented grain mash. The choice of grains varies depending on the type of whiskey being produced. Common grains used include barley, corn, rye, and wheat. The grains are ground, mixed with water, and then fermented. Yeast is added to convert the sugars in the mash into alcohol. The resulting liquid, known as the wash, is then distilled to increase its alcohol content. Whiskey is aged in wooden barrels, usually made of oak. The aging process allows the whiskey to develop its flavor, aroma, and character over time. The type of barrel and the duration of aging greatly influence the final product. Whiskey must be aged for a minimum period in order to be legally classified as whiskey. Often blended to achieve a consistent flavor profile. Master blenders combine different aged whiskeys to create a balanced and complex product. After blending, the whiskey is usually filtered, diluted to the desired strength, and then bottled.